Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for you today. This is going to be my Elite walkthrough of the Phoenix Cannon Elite. This is definitely something I should have had out, at least this recording was a couple weeks ago too. I should have had this out in the beginning, because this is really the only Elite raid that actually had mechanics that you had to go through, so it would have been helpful to have that out. But I was sick for a while, so I didn't want to do my commentary like that. And also, I was kind of hoping they would change the raid. While the mechanics are present, and they are not so much hard, but it's something you have to pay attention to, which we'll get into when those moments happen. But I was hoping this raid changed a lot from test, because the developers couldn't fix what was wrong with it, so instead they nerfed it. Because for whatever reason, they just couldn't get it to work properly. There was tons of bugs from test server to live server, and instead of fixing them correctly, they just basically nerfed all the mechanics to the point where it wouldn't matter if they killed you, because they couldn't get it to work. So I was saving this video because I wanted to have it maybe possibly fixed, or it wouldn't be, valid anymore. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. There's some slight variations from this, which I'll get to. I think the only change is the final boss in terms of it looking different, but everything else, all the mechanics are still the same from this video. This is also why I'm Quantum. I'm Gadgets now, which is obviously you've seen from the previous video on the EU server, because I'm running it with Legacy in this video. Now that you can use Battle Drone on stealth, Gadgets is just the far superior troll. Like there's literally zero advantages to being any other power as a controller besides Gadgets if you want to take it serious. Because Gadgets, you can put Battle Drone, what I'm trying to think of, Amazon Deflection and Hard Light Shield. So basically you can run Distract, Hard Light Shield, Amazon Deflection, and Battle Drone, and the improved Stealth hand mod, which is also a very powerful shield. So it's just so much more advantages to Gadgets there running that. So as you saw, just being in the hallway, that's just basically straight clearing hallway ads. There's nothing to worry about there. This first boss fight is something that actually has some mechanics to it. It's not that it's difficult. This is the one that's going to trip up pugs the most. The one that you're going to have the most issue in pugs is going to be this boss here. It's kind of because the last boss is really straightforward. The last boss you can get carried by tanks. So if you have really good tanks in your group, then the last boss becomes very easy. But this is the boss fight that it requires a lot of coordination. Not so much from like calls and everything. Like you could be off voice communication, not really worry about it. But the most important thing is that you have to be aware of your surroundings and what's going on around you. Because there are a lot of aspects of this fight where you have to be aware. The closest comparison I can think of is the Darkside War Factory Elite final boss with Darkside, because there's so much stuff going on at once and so different, like overlapping, not so much overlapping mechanics, but back-to-back and consistent mechanics throughout the fight, that you have to be aware of what's going on around you. Plus it also has that breakup mechanic, which I'll show when that actually happens. So this is the fight that's going to test you in a pug group. If you can get past this, you can pretty much clear the final boss. That's not really an issue. But this is the one that like you can easily get to death. You can easily cost yourself, your group, and then basically wipe. There's a lot of moments in this fight that you can die. So that's the one thing to watch out for. In terms of group mechanics, you can have two possibilities. Ideally, you want two tanks, because one tank will take basically the Lady Blackhawk, all the ads, and the second tank will have the suppressor. You can also have a troll stun the suppressor. You can also have a troll like pull the suppressor away when it spawns. It just has to remain stunned. It's just ideally you can have two tanks. In a pug group, I would certainly recommend two tanks, but it's not necessary. You could have a solo tank and just make sure that the troll stuns it. So at the beginning, you're just focusing on Lady Blackhawk and Thrasher. And then momentarily, this is going to be the first kind of moment where you can die. After a certain time here, there's a bunch of ads that are going to spawn right in the middle. And the problem is, if you're a DPS too close to the ads, they could lunge you and die. Same thing if you're a healer, kind of stay in the middle, they can lunge out and die. So you see right there, you saw all those ads spawn. That's the first moment that you can die. I've seen it plenty of times where people are just standing a bit too close, and then they just get wiped, and then basically quick, easy death. So just make sure you're not standing in the middle, making sure that the tank aggro's them first. Once again, if they have any kind of group crowd control, you're fine with that. In terms of DPS setup, most DPS are probably going to be precision anyway, just from the meta, but it doesn't matter if you have a might DPS AoE to clear the ads, and then the regular DPS focus on killing the Thrasher and then Lady Blackhawk. That's ideally the focus. You just want to have one. So right there when you saw, so we can kind of touch on that mechanic first. There's 2 stun mechanics in this fight from Lady Blackhawk. One is basically you're going to be like the chokehold animation where you're bobbing your head up and down. That is going to be the first mechanic. You can break out of that right away. But the issue is that the second one, which is what you saw previously in that clip, if you rewind a little bit, that one, see, I just kind of broke out there, that's fine. But the other one where your whole body is shaking, not shaking, but kind of in stun animation, that's the one where if you break out, you damage people beside you, just like in Darkstar War Factory Elite. I'll put the timestamp of what it actually looks like so you can actually follow it along, because I kind of breezed past that. But that's the number one thing you have to watch in this fight, to make sure you're not standing beside a healer or someone has to break, because a healer's going to have to break out because they can't stay stunned the entire time. Same thing, if you have immunity from a tank, that's going to stun break out and stun you as well, so you have to worry about that. So it's just be mindful of where you're standing. So now that the suppressor's out, the second tank was supposed to pull it, it's going to stun me. You can't use it in your power, so that's why ideally you don't want to be a solo tank. If you're not stunning it, because if it gets loose with a solo tank, then the solo tank obviously won't be able to use any powers, because the suppressor's going to be immune. So that's the other thing as well. Previously, before, we'll touch on that mechanic as well, but as you saw with all those balls coming up, see right now, this phase here, there's going to be, I think, 3 balls. There's going to be 2 small ones and then that 1 large one. So you have to be, two small, 1 large. You have to be within the proximity standing in that small one, and then it gives you a red aura, and then you can move in front of the circle, and that'll protect you from the large one. So you don't want to stand by the large one, because once it explodes, you're going to die. You want to make sure that you're all standing by the small ones to get the red aura to protect you from the large one explosion. So that's the one mechanic there. Lady Blackhawk herself has 2 mechanics. One's going to be a skull attack charge, and then when she charges you, she's going to, if you don't block, see, it's one of the things where you have to block. If you block her charge, you're perfectly fine. You only take like a fraction of the damage, but if you don't block or try to roll, you're going to take damage, and you're also going to spawn tornadoes on you. So that's the other issue as well. There's going to be more people around you, more tornadoes are going to spawn. They're not like the tornadoes from Zoo Elite, but similar in terms of their damage, in terms of their like 20 or 30k ticks each. So that's why if she's charging you, just block. Don't worry about moving, don't worry about anything. It's designed for you to block. That's the mechanic. So you want to make sure that you're aware of her charges anytime you see a skull, that she could charge back to back. So that's the other thing as well. And then her second skull is going to be hand claps. So you're going to see these hand claps. She spins in a 360-degree arc from her hand clap, and that is what you have to call there. So we call it like 360s or hand claps, whatever you want to do for your call out, but you have to block that. You don't want to have an issue with there. So when we're looking for that animation there, she's going to start off in one direction and go 360 all the way around. And the other thing you have to watch out for periodically, as you just saw here, skeletons are going to spawn on the side. The tanks have to be aware of that, because once again, easily the skeletons could spawn, jump the healer, they could jump a DPS. It's very quick death, especially if they're on the side. So ideally a healer wants to stay where they're not going to spawn, or watch, because they're not going to, I don't believe they spawn in the same spot twice. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure from my experience they haven't spawned in the same spot twice. So just be aware that, you know, if they spawn, don't stand there again. Or sorry, once they spawn, you can stand there again. Just don't stand in one of the other spots unless they spawn there. So it's just be mindful, either the troll stuns them. This is the one fight in Elite where a troller is really helpful in terms of stuns in this fight. But the issue is that you need, I think it's like what, 14,800, no, or 15,000? No, I think it's like 14,800, but that shouldn't be an issue. For me in my lower gear, I was just in Cork Vendor gear. I didn't have enough Dom, so I had to spec more Dom. So just be mindful that you have at least 15,000 Dom for this Elite fight. Or with a bulldozer soda to get you over, or a mega. But be mindful that if you can't stun as a troller in this fight, you're not very helpful whatsoever. That's the unfortunate part. If you can stun, it's very helpful. So once again, now you're seeing the hand clap animation. She's spinning. If you don't block that, you're going to die. She's going to charge now. So once again, you're just blocking. And then at that point, Eileen wasn't blocking. You've got the skeleton spawning. You've got the ball mechanic. That's the one stun you can break out from there. So it's a very mechanic heavy fight, but it's just, if you have personal accountability for your survivability, then you're fine. Like, it's really straightforward. Like, it's easy. This fight could be the easiest fight in the raid, or the hardest fight in the raid. It just depends on how your group wants to play it out. You know, if your group is joking around, not paying attention, then yeah, you're gonna bad time, have tons of wipes, and probably spend like an hour on this fight. or if everyone's paying attention, then you're fine. Like, it's this fight isn't about maximum damage. It isn't about running with the best DPS. Like, you can take your time with it. It's just that you have to make sure that you can actually survive. So that's the most important thing to be mindful of that fight. It's all personal accountability for your watching your own surroundings, which can be a struggle in pugs, that's for sure. But, you know, don't think that you have to be on mic the entire time. Don't think you have to do that. It's not necessary. Okay, so after the first boss fight, we have more hallway ads. Now, paying attention for this video in particular, where I went for the Vola style feat, which is basically you have to destroy all the volatile metals and focus damage on them. After the first boss, there are, I think, 2 that spawn in this hallway. Basically, that's why we're not rushing through and killing the ads. Once you see that volatile metal ad, you have to kill it because you can't let it reach its final form, which is another explosion. Basically, you'll see if you ever do a raid like this and you're not focusing on any damage, there'll be this one knockback explosion at the end of it, like the hallway ads. That's the volatile metal exploding. They're on the hallways as well as the final boss. So it's just something you have to watch for if you want to go for that feat, which is what we did in this video. So you see, volatile metal explodes on death with greater range and force the longer it lives. So basically, once that comes up, you just focus damage on it, make sure it dies. It has to die before it reaches that final explosion, which is basically, there's this hallway, I think there's another hallway, and then there's a bunch on the final boss. So it's just, most people think it's the final boss where that spawns if they don't have the feat already, but it's not. You have to make sure you get the hallway ones as well, which is why you want to really rush ahead, because I think there's another one around this corner as well. So it's just, as soon as you see the volatile metal, just, you know, focus target on that. It has to die. You can't let it live. And it's ideally if you're not splitting damage on a bunch of things, but obviously, once again, it's better if you have precision DPS, because then you could just, you know, instead of doing, you know, explosive shot, you're just flurry shot in volatile metal. Yeah, it's back in that around the corner. That's why we see is kind of rush out and put an orbital strike down. Yeah, but other than that, there's nothing really else going on so much with the hallway ads. It's just kind of there just to slow you down, or just kind of prolong the length of the raid. Because the first boss, the second boss part here, it's not really a boss, it's just kind of like more of like a puzzle room, which we'll touch on in a sec here once we actually get to it. But it was just kind of to add duration to the raid. Okay, so now we're getting to the puzzle room here. So with this one, there are some initial ads. You don't necessarily have to kill all these ads first to progress through the room. You have to go to the front of the room to turn the cogs. To see where it says bioscan metal Thanagar officers to bypass lock security door. You basically just turn the cog. There's pools that are going to spawn. There's some easy deaths to be able to caught in this fight, because depending on where you're positioned, the ads can come out and just, you know, basically gank you and jump on you and kill you. That's going to happen a lot of times when the tank's not paying attention. There's also going to be metal pools here where you could stand in the pools and spawn more ads if you want to troll people. But essentially the concept here, because now I've got that ad on me because I've stunned it. Essentially what you want to do is spawn the Thanagar officer and then kill the officer when he's standing on the those color panels. Basically you want to do that with the color corresponding. So you look back at the start. I believe there's a few different variations, but once we kind of pan it back to the beginning of the room here, I can show you the color panels. See where it says that Thanagar officer there, we have to basically drag him and kill him on that platform. And then as you see that platform, you can see that it pulses. See that green kind of line that pulses? That's where you know the Thanagar officer is correctly on the panel. So you want to make sure that he's on spawn there. Now die from the ad still there. But yeah, you definitely want to make sure that the Thanagar officer is on that panel, because if you kill it without it being the panel, it's not going to count. See how it says yellow and blue? So we did red first. So that's all it is. You're just doing it in order, making sure not to stand in the pools because you're going to spawn more ads. So it's just being mindful that the tank and the controller are not using any abilities that knock back ads, which ironically I was doing in this video because Singularity knocks back the ads. I can't remember in this part. Yeah, I think I'm knocking some way. So I think, because I couldn't remember when I first did these runs, I didn't have 15,000 Dom unless I put, like, you know, 250 skill points in Dom, so it just wasn't practical. So I don't remember if I was stunning or not. I have to pay attention here. But yeah, I was using Singularity, so if you're Quantum Control, don't use Singularity on the officers, because Singularity will cause that explosion knockback, unless the tank has them stunned with like a chrono. So you're fine with Anomaly, but don't use Singularity or Warp Barrage. Really, Warp Barrage got knockback. But that's the same thing. So if you're like a tank, like an earth tank using like jackhammer, it's just you don't want juggles and knockbacks because you're going to push the Thanagar officer off the platform. So that's what you want to avoid. There are feats for doing it perfectly correctly. I think you got to do it, was it 9 times for the feat? But yeah, and then there's other feats for this pools, which I think the pools don't count for this one, the final boss. But I don't know, I could, once again, you could correct me in the comments on that one. Because I think I still... Because you have to, I think it's 9, is it 6 perfect ones and 9 pool spawns? I can't remember. But once again, that's all it is. So just making sure you have the Thanagar officers on the portals, making sure you do them in the correct order, and making sure that you kill it successfully. And then, you know, once again, that's perfect run, and it counts towards the feat. So you don't need to spend unnecessarily more time in this raid. Plus, you know, just as Illusion was doing there, you control people and stand on the pool to spawn more ads. But it's pretty much more just a damage farming. This is just like the damage farming aspect of it. Like this is definitely the raid of the 2 that you want to comp on. And now we're going to be approaching the final boss, where it's more... this is the final boss. It saw so many bugs on test server where you couldn't even complete it. So the concept is great. I love the concept of this fight, but it's just... like plain old like tired mechanics because it's the same thing. So Dawnbreaker does the same thing he does in the alert. Drown does the same thing she does in the alert. Merciless does the same thing Merciless always does. Red Death does the same thing Red Death always does. So it's like, okay, we've kind of seen this enough. But so there are different combinations. So how this works is that the first boss you kill doesn't do any, like they don't do any of their special mechanics at the first one. But after the first boss dies, each boss will do their kind of personal mechanics. So Dawnbreaker obviously has his orbital strike, and it does his green ring where you have to run towards where he spawns. Drowned will have her laser. Merciless will have his pull-in attack, is also his supply drop and orbital mechanics. Red Death really does nothing. Red Death has like these little like weird energy tethers that spawn, and the red arrow that basically just slows people beside you, and Drown has the debuff ad as well. So ideally, this is the setup you want to do. There's tons of different ways you can do this. I know some people fight up on the stage, but it just depends what works for your tank. So basically, we separate one boss, and then you kill it down. If your group is good, you can grab 2 sub bosses. So if you say, for example, you grab 2, you grab Dawnbreaker and Drowned. You kill basically Drowned to like 5%. And then Dawnbreaker will be on 2%. Then basically, because when you kill Dawnbreaker, the other sub bosses gain health, which doesn't matter because we didn't touch the other bosses. But say if you got Drowned down to like 2% and then you kill Dawnbreaker, Drowned gets the health increase, but then it doesn't get health increase that high. So then basically Dawn's, your next boss is like half health. But that just depends entirely on your group. If you want to do it the safest route, this is the setup how you want to do. Grab one boss at a time. The other tank on the other side carries all the ads. Those metal pools are going to spawn. You want to avoid them. But most, like Dawnbreaker is going to be the most dangerous to the group. He's got that green ring, which you have to, like everyone in the group has to run towards it. He's an issue. The Drowned is an issue as well, but it's really just a laser. If everyone can avoid the laser, that's fine. It's just something that's a little bit annoying if you have Drowned like the other side of the room doing that. Then you have this Dark Waters ad as well that is going to debuff people. But ideally, if you want to be the safest route, it's going to be Dawnbreaker first, Drowned second, Merciless third, Red Death last, because Red Death is a joke. He does absolutely nothing. I've never seen anyone die to Red Death, at least in my group runs. So obviously if you want to do the combination feats, you're going to have to spread it out regardless. But if you're looking just to beat it, then you want Dawnbreaker out first, because Dawnbreaker is the easiest group, easiest sub boss that's going to kill the group. So this is that red arrow that's on me from Red Death. You just move away. That's all it is. So if you don't want to stand near another player with this red arrow, you just want to avoid that completely. So just run back. Obviously, you don't want to stand in the pools at the same time because you're going to spawn more ads for the tank, unless you're doing that feat, which I recommend doing in normal, not elite. And Drowned's got her stun move, same thing from the alert. So it's just like I was saying before, Dawnbreaker is the biggest risk to the group, so do Dawnbreaker. And then the second biggest risk to the group is Drowned, because people just can't avoid her laser. Merciless is super easy, just avoid doing orbitals and supply drops. Once again, it's easy. For the second attack, you've got a couple options here, because the issue with the second attack is that it can pull you through a pool and then spawn more ads. That's what you don't want. So what you want to do is, one, you just block through it. If you hold block on the second attack, you don't get pulled in. If you unblock it, you do it. The second way, the tank runs an immunity. So if the, like say it's a rage tank running ire or shatter restraints or not soothing sands, proton remedy for atomic. I'm drawing a blank on something. It's kind of sad, but when I'm doing this commentary, I'm not thinking about tanks at the moment because I'm a healer. But yeah, like I said, a tank can run a group breakout immunity. I'm just drawing a blank on some of the other ones off the top of my head, what the exact powers are called. The other thing you do is a breakout trinket as well. I have the breakout trinket. That's my number 9 ability. So you just pop the breakout trinket, and then you're fine too. It's just that you don't want to get sucked in and pulled through a pool. That's the end goal. Just however you want to do it, that's fine. And then once again, so now Merciless, you saw, he's going to do a pull attack. Everyone's blocking. And then some got pulled in. That's all it is. So this is going to be the mechanic you have to watch out for, the Dark Energy Tether. So this is different from what it is on live server. As of this recording, they changed it. Now when you get the Dark Tether, you turn into a skeleton. So the skeleton's like from the Halloween event. So when you turn into a skeleton, you just walk towards the person with the tether, and that's it. Basically, you stand by them for like a couple seconds, and the tether disappears. Tips for that, you don't want to roll. If you have a tether, don't roll, because for one, rolling puts you in basically the damage immunity. So basically you're rolling and then not getting the damage from that. It's not applying correctly. And then obviously if you roll, you can roll past someone depending if you have Tumbling Master. So ideally you don't want to roll at all. You just walk towards the person. Don't like panic, just walk. Don't try to do dash attack or something like that as a tank. So that's the main thing. And the tether, really, it doesn't. That's the thing. On test server, it did a ton of damage. Like it would group wipe you if you screwed up. Now they've nerfed it down to it hardly doing any damage. I think it still does more damage than like what a healer shield can cover. But it's not like the biggest risk in the world. If it explodes, you know, it explodes and may kill you, but more likely it's not. It's just going to knock everyone back and annoy you. Like I got knocked back through a pool in the ad spawn. So it's really, the tether is something that could have been a lot better, but the devs just can't get it to work properly. The tether has been buggy since the rendition of this entire raid on test server. It's never been fixed properly. It's a work in progress. So that's the real shame. Like this raid could have been really fun. It still is fun. Like I like this raid more than Into the Dark Multiverse, because at least there's some mechanic present here, and the first boss can kind of trip up groups, and there's still a lot of stuff going on with this last fight. It's just that there's no danger. Like that it is. Like there's no risk to the group. Like the first boss is legit. The final boss, which is supposed to be the harder of the two, ends up being the easiest. Like yeah, if you're going for like a feat, then it could be a little bit harder. If you have Dawnbreaker last can be an issue. Same with us. Like since we're going for the volatile metal feat, the volatile metals are going to spawn periodically in this fight. As soon as they spawn, if you're not going for the feat, you can just ignore them. But since we're going for the feat, we have to kill them. So as soon as the volatile metal spawns, we have to focus that down so it doesn't explode, or we lose that. So the other thing as well is the volatile metal, if you don't DPS it, it doesn't go into its phase. So that's the thing. So if you don't damage it, it's not really an issue. That's why if you're not going for the feat, you don't have to worry about the volatile metals in this boss fight. But if they start to get hit by like AoE damage from like a might DPS, then that's going to be an issue. So that's why you have to kill them, and that's why it could be a risk on live server. Not sorry, live server, but in your live runs when you're running this. So you can kind of see those Red Death tethers now. I mean, they tick you for some damage. They could be a bit annoying, but I mean, once again, it's a joke. Like Red Death is a complete joke. And that's the same thing. It's just like Merciless does the same thing he always does, so everyone knows how to avoid him. I mean, drown, the only risk to drown is like the laser. The debuff is annoying, but it's not going to really kill you that much unless it hits the tank. Other than that, Dawnbreaker was legit, but it's just that Dawnbreaker has a bunch of AoE mechanics, so it's like the Dawnbreaker orbital that you have to watch out for. You have to watch out for the green ring, which is an issue because all players, like everyone has to run towards it. So a green ring can spawn on one side of the map and the tank with the other odds on the opposite side. So then it's like if you don't have dash attack, you're going to die and explode. So that's why Dawnbreaker is really the only risk, but that's not because Dawnbreaker hits hard. It's just that Dawnbreaker has the mechanics you have to watch out for. So same thing, now the volatile metal spawns, we have to kill that, so we just focus targets. So it's really just setting yourself up to be whichever you feel the most comfortable in. Like I said, you can fight up on the stage. You just want to be far enough, you want Merciless far enough away that if you do an orbital or a supply drop, he's not close enough to trigger that. Like he'll trigger his mechanics, so as long as he's on the other side, you're fine. And then You ideally don't want multiple bosses attacking at the same time, because then you have multiple ones doing their mechanics. But that was the run. That was Phoenix Cannon Elite. We got the Volo style feat, which should pop in a moment here. That's the volatile metal feat. And still, like a 25-minute run for us just kind of messing around. It was a pretty quick run too. I know some people are getting it in like 19-20 minutes now, but I mean 25-38 for a run that was 2 weeks ago with everyone on crappy gear was a solid run as well. So take care, guys. Thanks for watching.